I have to run the intro. Oh, well, next week. And we are live. Hi, I am Sean Cowgill. Welcome this week to Wings Week in Review. And I'm a returning citizen. Like I said last week, if you don't know what that is, you got to keep watching the show. We'll tell you, but we're not going to tell you right now. This is Ann Edenfield Sweet. She is the one who started all this 28 years ago.
Yep,
Wings,
years.
Wings for Life International. And we have 8 locations now in New Mexico and Liberia. So we are very international. Anna's going to tell you everything that happened this week and what's coming up in the future and all the good stuff and everything that you've done to help Wings for Life. We're here to tell you about. And we have a special guest, Brandon Estrada. He's a guy, he's changing the world one day at a time, and you're going to find out how.
Well, first we'll talk about what I've been doing this week. I'm trying to think of all the things I've been doing this week. We actually went down to Las Cruces this week. I'm trying to go out to all of our various locations where we're starting new programs. I've been doing all kinds of Zoom training. We are going to be starting 8 new programs across the state of New Mexico. And it's our Wings for Life educational program. And the life stands for life skills imparted to families through education. And I'm very excited about the teams that we're getting set up. We will be in Farmington, New Mexico, which is the far corner of New Mexico. Then we are in Espanola, we are in Santa Fe, Roswell, Las Cruces, and then in the immediate Albuquerque area, we've got Rio Rancho, a suburb of Albuquerque, Los Lunas to the south of us, and the East Mountains. And then of course our weekly program in Albuquerque. Now we are starting up this Monday on the 16th on Martin Luther King Day. It's a holiday, but hopefully everybody can come anyway. It will be our kickoff night for this year, and we'll be teaching everybody about the 40 developmental assets. And these are key to everything that we do at Wings, because these are guaranteed ways to cut at-risk behaviors. And we're working with the families of prisoners. We're working with juvenile probationers. We are working with people that are dealing typically with the legal system. And we want to cut that. We don't want anybody going to prison. And currently in America today, 1 out of 3 Americans have a criminal record. So don't think you're alone if you're out there with a criminal record, but we don't want those numbers. My gosh, that is a horrible statistic. America has 1 out of 3 people with a criminal record. There's something wrong here. This is not our land of enchantment or the good old USA where everybody wants to come if everybody's incarcerated. So we try to teach and share ways that this doesn't happen. So it's a game night Monday night. So come, it's going to be so much fun. We play games. We do all kinds of interactive things, and it's all teaching, but practical teaching, but in a fun way, because I don't want to sit and lecture about these things. I want us to play games and have people understand and internalize how can they make things better for themselves. And we can't change how we grew up. I was blessed. I grew up in a very healthy household, but most of the folks that we are dealing with did not. And so we want to help them. We can't change their past, but we can change that present day and that future. So we want to be able to do that for you. Also, if you're listening to us, we are going to descend upon the Capitol building in the state of New Mexico up at Santa Fe on January the 24th. And we are going to wear our Wings shirts. So if you are one of our Wings folks in the state of New Mexico, we want you to contact me so I know to expect you. We have a reserved room up there. We are going to be introduced on the Senate floor and hopefully on the House floor. And we are going to be asking for more money for our capital outlay funds for a new building. We already have $1,222,000 for a building, but that is not enough for what we want to accomplish. And so we are going to ask for at least another $3 million. And I figure with $4.222 million, that'll give us some money to work with to be able to at least start to do all the things that we want to do and create a one-stop shop, a big Wings community center, and a resource center. And of course, it'll be where our Wings Works will be housed. And so there's just so many exciting things going on here at Wings every day, every week. And we are thankful for Sean to doing our Wings Week in Review so we can look back at it. Of course, we're putting our annual report together, looking at all our statistics for last year. And it's very exciting what we've been able to accomplish. It's just actually a miracle of what's happened in 2022. And of course, now we're in 2023, and we just know that we have even bigger, grander plans and more things that are going to open up for us. So, and now we've got one of our favorite speakers here that's going to be coming on next with Brandon. And so, unless there are any comments there that I need to respond to,
nothing yet. But please leave some comments. We'll answer you right away. And if you're a viewer and you leave a comment, every week I make sure everyone gets answered because you are what makes the show. Not us, not her. You. Thank you.
That's right. So thanks for joining us today. And now you're going to learn all about what Brandon has to share. And he's got some wonderful things that he's going to share with us today. So, Brandon, here you go.
And we are going to the Capitol in Santa Fe next week. And I can't wait because I just got off federal probation. I can vote now. So my voice counts in New Mexico. In California, you can vote as long as you're not in the jail, but you could even be in a halfway house and vote. But New Mexico, I had to wait. So
say your voice always counts. Now it's just official.
Now it's official. So, and I guess we're all gonna speak to different senators and legislators, and
it should be
that
should be fun. I mean, on that note, I don't know if you're gonna introduce or anything, but
I was going to.
But Nami will be out there as well, so we can jump into that. But go ahead, I'll let you.
Oh, this is Brandon Estrada, guys, and 4 or 5. I think you're involved in 4 or 5 organizations. Not to mention what you do in your own spare time. And I had a great conversation with this man on the phone. He really got me excited. We were touching on certain subjects that my heart goes out to: homeless people, mental health, suicide. There's so much. Since you said Nami, did I say the right? Nami. Nami.
That's all right.
Let's start with Nami, and why don't you tell everybody maybe a little bit about yourself? And
sure. So, as Sean mentioned, Sean called me up yesterday. My name is Brandon. I'm with a couple different organizations revolving around behavioral health, and I got a call from Sean, and I try to answer all my calls that come through because you never know who's going to be on the other line. Nowadays, a lot of people like to just screen it, let it go to voicemail, but I try to answer all the calls, and I'm glad I did. It was Sean, and Sean said that he saw my name on a list for Wings of Life and called me up, and I'm really glad he did because this is exactly what I want to be doing: is talking to people, sharing my stories, sharing what we have going on. And so, a little bit about me. I'm from New Mexico. I'm born and raised in Gallup, New Mexico. Lived in Los Angeles for 8 years, and then came back to New Mexico. I always knew I was going to be returning, and currently I work with 3 primary organizations. One is Peak Behavioral Health. They are Peak Behavioral Health is a inpatient acute care facility, so we do higher level behavioral health treatment down in near Las Cruces.
Okay.
And then through that, I got connected with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is shortened for NAMI, as we've been trying to pronounce. They are a national nonprofit. We are here at the Albuquerque affiliate, and I have joined their board of directors, so I sit on their board of directors.
Oh,
and then also through that, I've started up Never Ride Alone. Never Ride Alone is a nonprofit for suicide awareness and prevention.
And you started that up.
And I started that up.
Thank you.
That was me and my partner, Richard, who we can talk about. And we started that up. And what it is a suicide prevention nonprofit, which tries to reach people through the means of bicycle, trying to ride around wherever we go. We try to reach people on bicycle. And we've successfully done 2 trips across the country. Not myself. Richard is a cyclist, but he's ridden across the country twice, all in the name of suicide awareness and prevention. And so those are the main things I have going on, but it kind of all blends together, which is what I love. Is my day today is trying to find one of those 3 organizations, trying to find somebody who wants to talk about it. And so
here we are,
whether it be the Peak, NAMI, or Never Ride Alone.
I mean, suicide, I'll tell you, there was a time I was suicidal before I went to prison, but I knew I was going to go. I didn't know how much time I was going to get.
Sure.
Man, I really, really thought about it.
Sure.
I tied a rope once, stared at it. I mean, didn't call anybody, wasn't going to tell anybody, but I do know that there's a cry for help suicide, right? And those are the people that hopefully you can reach before they do it. There's a I don't want to say his name, but he's affiliated with Wings for Life. And you know who I'm looking at Mary Briggs. She's our camera woman. Thank you, Mary. So I don't want to give his name around. He's been on this show a few times. He had a girlfriend who was suicidal. 4 or 5 times he's told me he's went over there and tried to calm her down. This last time he went over there, her wrist was all sliced up and bloody. He bandaged it up and everything. And, he thought it was safe for her to spend, for him to leave.
Sure.
2 hours later, she hung herself. So if somebody's going to do it, and this just happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. So when somebody's going to do it, they cry for help, but then there's the other one where they just go ahead and do it.
Sure.
And I don't know. He tried to. I mean, she loved him. He loved her, from what I understand, and it wasn't anything to do with him. But
Sure.
of course, he's going to take it personal. I know a woman that was married twice. Both of her husbands committed suicide, even the second one. So I don't think she'll ever be married. How do you live with that?
You probably a little scarred if two of your husbands, probably a little tainted, little uneasy about going into a third marriage. But it's a very hard situation. It's not something that I try to understand all too much, because we can't, right? Everybody's individual is unique and special to them.
And children getting bullied in schools,
sure,
cyberbullying.
Someone might
a big suicide.
Right. Some people might be doing it for one reason, because they're trying to escape. Some people might be doing it because they don't know what else to do. All these different things. And the unfortunate part is, when somebody successfully attempts and commits suicide, we can't ask them any questions afterwards. And so, it's a very complex.
Can't fill out the survey. Yeah.
It's a very complex situation. What we do kind of know is that, for the most part, people don't want to die. They're trying to escape something. They don't know how to either maybe financial, relationship, environmental. Something is making them feel trapped, that death seems like the only option. And so it's not that they want to die, but that just seems like the only way to escape something that they're going through.
I know battered women are one. My mother tried to commit suicide because she was a battered woman. I was a battered child. But they don't know how to escape the situation, and to them that's the only way out.
They don't. It's the only way out, and it's not necessarily the easy way out, but they just don't know what else. This is the only solution that makes sense to them. That's feasible, right? Sometimes they see this huge hill that they have to climb, and they figure this, But again, we don't know. We don't know individual situations. Maybe they're being pressured by somebody. You don't know. But the important part is, I'm not here to, try to argue anybody's rationale for wanting to commit suicide. I'm here to tell people that every single one of us has a reason to live, and every single one of us has a purpose, and it might take us a while to find it, but I can promise you that whatever you're going through, it will pass. It's going to be extremely challenging, but you're not alone, and that's NAMI's slogan. You're not alone. That's what we were. The whole idea of NAMI is that we're a group of peers that support each other, and so. It started back in the 70s with a bunch of families who came together to build resources together because their family members or their children had mental illness. And back then, even there's not very many resources now, but even back then, there was nothing. There was nothing for families.
When my mother was a battered woman in the 70s, nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
Family knew, they sweep it under the rug. They don't talk about it. It's nowhere to go. Nobody would help her.
No, nothing to turn to. And so families started to turn to each other, and that's how NAMI was started. And so that's what we still maintain. We're a group of peers of people with mental illness or people affected by mental illness, where we can turn to each other and support each other. And so our motto or our slogan is "You're not alone," because even though everybody's situation is unique, there's somebody else who has some type of shared experience that you can build off of. And there's treatment, there's doctors, there's medication, but there's something about talking to others who are going through the same thing you are that you can't get from a provider or a doctor.
You can't get.
And so with Never Ride Alone, that's where we're kind of playing off of the words, you are not alone. Never Ride Alone is the same idea that anybody who's struggling with mental health, anybody who's contemplating suicide, we just want them to know that they're not alone, right? We might not be able to lift the burden for you, but we can tell you that you're not alone in what you're feeling. You're not alone in your fear or whatever it might be, and that you have a reason, you have a purpose. There's something out there for you to do. You're here.
I know that's hard for them to believe at the time, because I contemplated, and I've been homeless, and I've been out there with the mentally ill, and I've seen it in San Francisco, homeless out there, and 15 years ago. But I remember the mental. I remember the suicidal screams for help. Nobody cared. Even if you do understand, you don't understand me. I don't care where you've been. This is my stuff. I got to kill myself. I've heard it, and I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know how to solve that.
I don't know either.
I've begged people not to kill themselves.
Sure.
I really have.
Yeah.
When I was out there on the streets, I remember.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going on out there. And when you die out in the streets, nobody really does care.
Right.
Maybe the couple people on the corner that have a tent next to you or something, but really, they really have. When they say no one cares, they're not lying.
Sure, and that's the solution. There's no top-down solution for suicide. There's nothing. We can't pass a law. There's no policy. It has to come from culture or from us just caring about each other. Because when you say that people don't care, a lot of times people don't care. If somebody were to come up to most people on the street and say I'm suicidal, they're probably just gonna walk away from them and leave them alone, right. And they're gonna and so culturally we need a culture shift where we actively decide that we're gonna care about our friends, we're gonna care about our family members. If we notice the signs and symptoms, we're gonna try to do something. Maybe it's not gonna work, but we do know that as much as 4 out of 5 people who commit suicide or who die by suicide is the proper language, show some type of warning sign. They show some type of sign that they're asking for help. And it might not be directly that they're saying for help, but some way it might be substance use, right? They might be turning to substance use, and that's their way of trying to get some type of emotional out, and that's their way of saying for help. Some people really do just ask for help and they just can't find it because nobody's paying attention to them. And so just that culture change. There's no top-down policy, nothing that we can do. It has to come from within, and that's what we hope to do with Never Ride Alone in NAMI, is educate and awareness, because that's our number one tool, is just build awareness to those around you that somebody might be going through something that you might just be able to help them with.
I do know one thing that really helps though. Sometimes people on the street with the mental illness, they just want somebody to listen to them. You see them screaming and yelling and stuff. It's not that they want attention. They actually, you won't stop to listen to them. So they're screaming out what they wanted you to hear. They just, I exist is what they're really saying. If you could instead of giving them $1 or giving them $1 but stop and listen to them and say, do you have a story? Just say do you have a story while you're out here? 9 out of 10 times they're going to tell you if you're going to listen. Right. Give them 5 or 10 minutes. That's worth more than $1. That's worth more than anything. That makes a difference.
They're just looking to be recognized as a person,
acknowledged that they exist.
And so that's what we do a lot of. So I do a lot of suicide awareness and prevention trainings. I do them at schools. I do them at businesses. They just bring us in for their employees. I also just got certified as a mental health first aid instructor. So I'm going to be doing So I'm going to be doing first aid, mental health first aid instructions. I'm going to be certifying others. I'm going to be certifying others in mental health first aid. Schools, businesses again, and really what it does is some of it's very straightforward, but it just kind of gives you a model of, if I experience somebody showing these signs and symptoms, what do I do, right? And what do we do? One of the biggest things. I'm turning this off. That's all right. A little excitement.
My bad. No, I forgot to turn my phone off.
No worries. Because I think for the most part, a lot of people recognize when something's going on with a friend or a family member. I think one of two things happens. They either don't know what to do when they do recognize that, or 2, they are fearful to act, or they don't have the courage to act and want to to help them. Not necessarily want, but they're afraid to act. And so through the suicide prevention and training and through the mental health first aid, that's what we try to do. Is if you come across somebody, like you said, listening to them is a major thing you can do for somebody who's suicidal. And culturally, we have this tendency that when somebody starts telling us about their problems, we react by telling them our problems. Yeah. We turn it towards us, and what a lot of people are doing, I think a lot of people they have a good intentions, and they're trying to relate to the person. But what we know through our suicide training and through clinical trainings is that that's not what they need. They don't need you to understand that.
I've been homeless too. I know what you're going through.
Right.
Yes, sure, pal. That's why you're homeless now, right? You just pulled up in a car.
Right, exactly. And that turns them off from wanting to talk to you, because it's like, well, you don't want to hear from me. You want to talk about you. And so one of the things we teach in mental health first aid and suicide prevention is, make sure you don't use any I comments, right? Don't say I understand, right? So if somebody says I'm having a hard time, I'm thinking about killing myself, never say I understand, because that turns the conversation to you. Never turn the conversation to you. And if you don't know what to say, just listen, right? Just say, okay, another big thing is just reinforcing encouragement, telling them it's okay, right? It's not that you don't want to give them a false hope that everything's just glad and tight. You don't want to just tell them to get over it, but you do want to encourage them that it will be okay. But going back to your point about just listening to people on the streets or whatever it might be, that's one of the biggest things we try to get across is make sure that you don't turn the conversation to you. If somebody is expressing themselves, even if you think they're doing it for attention, even if you think they are being irrational, it doesn't matter. Their problems are real to them. Your job is not to make the problems real to you. Your job is to make them feel heard. Because a lot of times that's what people want. They're not looking to make a point. They're not looking to, they're not looking to they're not looking to justify their whole life.
They
They're
don't want to
looking
hear
for somebody to
solutions.
listen. They don't.
Not at that time. Probably.
They want somebody to listen to them and feel heard. And sometimes that's all it takes. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm having a problem and maybe I call my mom or something, all it takes is for me to vent. All I need is 5 minutes to get it out. I don't need her to say anything. And then I feel better. It's something about just saying it, just verbalizing it, right? When we say something, we speak it into existence. And so when we have the ability,
it's out there in the
right,
universe. It's
and
not
so,
just you carrying it around.
So when we allow others to share what they're feeling without taking the conversation away from them, we allow them to we allow them to put their problems, put them into the world and make them real and get them off their chest. And so anyways, going back to that point, is that's one thing we can really do is if you ever do come across somebody who's suicidal or feeling suicidal or thinking about taking their life, make sure you don't turn the conversation towards yourself. And it's not that you would out of selfish reasons, but what we know is that they're trying to express themselves. And when we say something about ourselves, it makes them feel isolated again, kind of puts them in their bubble again.
Right.
So
I was challenged once. I was once in a residential treatment program for a year. One of our challenges was to go the whole day without saying I, myself, or me. Yep. And it's hard to even do for an hour. I challenge you to go take an hour where you're going to talk to somebody. You can't say the word I, me, or myself. Good luck with it. It's very difficult. But if you try that every once in a while for an hour, then maybe you could, be part of one of the many organizations that you work for.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know that. Have you ever tried that challenge?
I have. I mean, I'm just thinking of a personal example right now. I had a friend who, he's going through some substance use stuff, and he shared with me that he's going to be going to AA, and during that conversation, even with all my training, I was trying so hard to make sure that I didn't say anything that I understood or that anything but when you're in those conversations, for some reason, that's where your mind goes. Your mind goes to your own, how do you relate to their story? And so I have tried it. And in that conversation, I failed. And I shouldn't say I failed, but he probably didn't think anything of it because we were just friends talking. But as I'm sitting there talking to him and I caught myself saying I or whatever it might be, I always took a step back and kind of gave myself a slap on the wrist and said, and you can feel it. And when you're talking to them and they're expressing themselves and you say I, you turn towards you can feel the energy kind of shift because they're trying to express it and express because it's hard, right? He might be a little embarrassed or whatever it might be to be talking about this. And anything you do that might hinder them from wanting to share is not good. If they're coming to you in a vulnerable place, and by turning the conversation, they might make them feel more vulnerable. So that's a big one that we know of.
AA has been a big part of my life, and when new people come in the door, we don't want to scare them away.
Right.
We're taught all that, but Alcoholics Anonymous was started because for years doctors couldn't cure. There is no cure,
sure.
But doctors couldn't help us, like psychiatrists, teachers, priests. Nobody could really get to them except one alcoholic who could help another alcoholic. But then even then, it's got to be done the right way,
right?
Which
is huge right now. So peer support is growing rapidly right now, and we couldn't grow it fast enough. And it's the model has been around for a long time, but for some reason we're just realizing how powerful peer support is. And so with substance use, we're trying to get as many certified peer support workers.
I'm signed up, but I've been waiting.
Good.
I'm waiting to get certified, but I've got the call yet.
Because that is huge. I mean, like we were saying before, there's only things you can hear from somebody else who actually has that has the same experience that is going to resonate with you. And so as far as peers and in topic of suicide, if you had an experience of your own, that's they say is not that can be encouraged to share, right? To show that maybe you do have shared experience. Yeah.
And we do have a comment. Go on.
Sure,
I'm sorry.
You're fine. But so that's what we're doing with Never Ride Alone, is trying to build awareness. NAMI trying to build awareness, because that's the best tool we have, is awareness and education. Trying to get the word out there that you might just be the difference to save a life, and to practice these things, right? Like you said, practice going a whole day without saying I, me, or myself. Yeah. It's extremely challenging, and
I've never been able to do it a whole day, but an hour, yes. How many times did they just say I?
Yep.
11,
yep.
right?
Yep. And then when you get to and when you actually encounter somebody who might be contemplating suicide, it gets even more challenging. And then one of the most challenging things what I do in my trainings is I have people practice asking each other, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about taking your own life? Because that's part of the training. That's what we know. We don't want to sugarcoat it. If you think somebody's in danger of taking their own life, there's no sugarcoating, trying to find out the answer. You are trained to ask somebody point blank, are you thinking about taking your life? Because that question is so important for that person to hear, right? Because maybe they are, and you simply asking it puts it into perspective for them. Like, well, if they're thinking I'm doing this, maybe I need to take a step back. And maybe they're not. Maybe they're not contemplating suicide, but you simply asking that, again, it can put it into perspective, right? Maybe once you ask them that, they're like, okay, maybe my problems aren't that big, and I'm, maybe what I'm putting out there in the world doesn't represent what I'm feeling. But that question is very, very hard.
Their feelings are valid. You need to know that, and a lot of times they're told they're not.
Yep, and that's a very hard question. If you've ever been noticing somebody with warning signs and had to ask them, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about taking your life? It's a very hard question to ask. It's hard.
Yeah. Do they want to be honest with you?
Right. Are they going to be honest with you? And so that's what we do in trainings. If you want to be prepared to help somebody, I encourage you in the car to try it, because even by yourself, sometimes you can get stuck on the words because it's a scary question, right? And what if they say yes? What are you supposed to do?
Right? What prepared for that answer?
Right. And I think a lot of people, that's the biggest thing, is they notice people needing help, but what if they actually ask me to help them? What do I do?
And so you probably think, who can I call?
Right? Exactly.
No, he asked you. They asked you. So
yeah.
So why don't you help?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's the culture. That's the culture change. That's the culture change I would like to see, is everybody's problems are somebody else's problems, right? If there's somebody on the street who might be contemplating suicide, vocally maybe we say that's not a good thing, but in our heads we think, okay, well, that's somebody else's problem to try to help them. It's not my problem. And culturally, if we come across a problem, we have to adopt it as our problem, because waiting for somebody else to fix it might not get fixed.
Yeah. And then they call someone, and
right.
The person gets up. Can I read this comment? I think it's a question. Let's see. It's from Mandy, and she says, "That's a great." Get my glasses. That's a great point. Your job is not to make it about our problems. Your job is not to make their problems your problems. Your job is to listen. Very good.
Just commenting on, if you ever come across somebody sharing their issues, make sure you don't try to take away from their problems. Don't try to evaluate their problems. Don't try to justify them. Just let them be their problems. So
I brought something up last week, and I want to see how you feel about this, because this occurred to me. This is the same thing having to do with people on the streets. We see them homeless everywhere, at the bus stops, at the red lights. If you ever go anywhere near the zone, you'll see tents. And I came from San Francisco. We have 20 and 40 blocks of tents, and it's crazy. But if you're walking down the street and there's somebody laying there on the side, we just keep walking by, and it's an eyesore to us. There was a time in this world where somebody, is he all right? Somebody call the ambulance. Everybody, they wouldn't just walk by a person. You don't know if he's dead or not, but we're so mad that he's in our way and he's an eyesore to the building. And if you call somebody, it's just to get rid of the garbage that you see in your eye. That's what people see. And I've seen people walk by. What has happened to the world? Why do we look? It's an eyesore instead of a person. Right. It's come to that. You know what I mean?
I do, and it's like we were just saying, it's somebody else's problem, right?
Yeah.
In Albuquerque, you hear a lot of talk about the unsheltered.
I see them laying everywhere, and nobody does anything.
And everybody keeps looking at the city. Everybody keeps looking at the state as if it's their problem, right? What are you going to do about this? How are you going to fix this? And they're trying to come up with all these different
That
solutions.
could be your neighbor, your father, the man who runs the grocery store next door. You're just assuming what he doesn't
Right.
count. It's not
They-
alive.
Everybody wants
Who are
the
you to be
city
God?
to
Who are you
figure
to play
out
God?
some type of solution so that we don't have to deal with it. But
Yeah.
as a city, as a community, it's our problem, right? And issues such as homelessness and the
I
unsheltered.
say at least call an ambulance for the person. who's
Yeah,
laying
if somebody's
there dead.
laying there and
You
they're
did
not,
oh, he's just drunk here or something. You don't know.
that.
Are you a doctor?
You
Did
don't
you
know
check?
that.
Did you check his pulse? If you don't care, call someone who does. I mean,
Yeah.
at least.
I mean, our priorities are backwards. But it's a community problem. Same thing with suicide, right? It's not a city problem. It's not, in New Mexico, just for some statistics, suicide rates have only continued to increase. And I think the latest numbers we have are 2020, because we're always about 2 years behind. We had about 500 and something 533 adolescent suicides, I think it was.
I
that
wanted
might
to
be-
ask you
that
about
might- that might be for-
teenage suicides. I know the social media. The
Yeah.
kids can be cruel to each other,
Yeah.
and they take a picture of you, whatever, naked or something. They pass it through the whole school, and the girl or the boy goes and kills himself over that.
Suddenly they feel like they
something-
can't escape it.
Right.
There's this problem.
Yeah,
but,
they can't. Then yeah.
But that's the exact point. Is it's a community issue, right? Within the schools, we have to promote a community of companionship, not trying to put each other on blast or trying to set somebody up for embarrassment. We have to. It's a simple consideration, right, for your fellow man, and it's really hard. It's really challenging culturally. We focus on ourselves, and we're a very selfish culture. Not anybody here in this room, but I'm just saying, everybody's kind of trying to get to where they're trying to get to.
Oh, I'm guilty too. I see a homeless guy sometimes roll up my window, and I don't want to deal with you right now.
Right.
I'm guilty too. But there's most of the time I care. But
Right.
there are other times I just 18 people already asked me for $1, guy. And it's like, I get to me sometimes, and I've been homeless, but I can't. I can help 1 or 2 a day, but 18 the numbers get to me sometimes.
Well, and that's another thing. That's another thing about suicide prevention that we also do a lot of trainings on.
Do you get burnt out on that, or I don't?
Well,
burnout's not the right word, but how about just overwhelmed with? How many suicide calls can you take in one day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I find myself. I consider myself very fortunate. If somebody actually gives out my number that they're gonna call me and want to talk about something, that's very fortunate. So that happens from time to time. I get a lot of parents calling me saying something. Their daughter had an attempted suicide, or they found out their son or daughter is considering this, and those are more of the calls I get. And I don't really get burnt out, but
people are also afraid you get the line tapped, or
so
and if you say that you're required to call the police,
right?
You're required to call the police.
If
they admit it to you that someone calls you up and I want to commit suicide. I don't know why I'm calling you. I think I'm going to do it, and they hang up the phone.
Right.
Are you required to call the police?
I don't know about required. I would if I knew somebody that told me that they were contemplating suicide. One of the main things is for them to not be alone. What we know is that if somebody's considering suicide, again, similar to like CPR, you have about a 30-minute window to try to get in contact with that person, and if you can. There's a high probability of saving their life. Outside of that, there's a chance that they might go through with it. But
are the lines tapped?
No.
Or can you trace the call?
No. This is just my cell phone. This is just
okay.
This isn't an official service.
It's not suicide prevention. Please hold.
I mean, yeah, that's who they probably should call. But yeah, I don't get those calls too necessarily. This is I get family calls looking for services, with Peak or something like that. But that's what I was gonna say is that on getting burnt out. That's one thing we teach with suicide awareness and prevention is that, again, kind of what we're talking about with keeping the conversation about them is don't adopt their problems. And so sometimes when you have a friend who's showing signs or maybe they're expressing that they're thinking about taking their life, it's very hard to not feel like it's your responsibility to save them. And even though you want to help them, it's so important that you don't take their thoughts of suicide home with you, right? It's because a lot of people feel guilty. Like, if I can't help this person, it's my fault that they killed themselves because they told me I didn't know what to do. These are their problems. Yes, you should do everything you can as a friend, But same thing with the unsheltered, right? We can help so many people.
Was that the term they're using now? Unsheltered?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
It is. I catch myself. I talk to a lot of people. Tried to.
I know they've changed. They tried to experiment with different.
I think that's one of them is the unsheltered. Yeah, and but the point being is that it's hard to not want to pull somebody else's problems in as own and in as our own, and so it's important to not take anybody else's problems home with you. If you come across somebody who's contemplating suicide and they share that with you, do everything you can. If maybe say a prayer if that's your faith, but don't go home feeling like it's your responsibility to save them, because then you start to feel this guilt. You do what you can, and then you try to help them. Otherwise, it's their problem to fix, and you just have to be there for them.
I have a gentleman, I think it's a man, he says sentencing February 3rd. So he's probably watching from the Federal Prison Talk channel. I deal with a lot of people on federal pretrial. Yeah. It was 4 years for me, not knowing how much time you're going to get, not till you get sentenced. So I'm sure he's been going through the same thing. That's when you think about suicide. 20 years, 10 years, a year goes by, you have a pretrial officer, you have to pee in a cup twice a week, and you can't go here, you can only work here, and it's like, and you haven't even been to court yet until you get sentenced, and you go through hell, and sometimes you think suicide. I mean, I thought it my few times. So if you're watching the show, please do not consider suicide. If you're watching the show, that means you are out on a bail or a bond. It means you're not going to a penitentiary or a medium facility. You're going to go to the camp. Just to let you know, that's why they let you out on a bond. So you're not going to do probably more than 10 years, and hopefully it's only 1 year. But I know your sentencing's coming up next month. You can give me a call later. My number's on the channel there, but we'll talk. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and it's it will pass, and I can't speak to direct experience with any incarceration.
2 years for me. He's been on pretrial.
That's what we want.
It's a living hell. Nobody believes you're going to prison. 2 years. Oh, they're going to give you probation. They don't let you run the streets for 2 years.
Yeah,
and just send you to prison. Yes, they do. That's the federal government. I know what he's going for.
But it will pass. It will pass. The greatest stories that we have, the best things that we have are people like you to share successes, right? Share challenging times.
You get through it. Pretrial's the hardest part. The prison was so easy.
That you make it through, right? And so for you with incarceration, for myself, and then with people with mental illness, right? It feels like it won't, but it will pass. It feels like you have this huge mountain.
It definitely comes across your mind. I know it does. I know it does.
And if you're ever in the moment of actually considering it, there's several stages. There's one is thinking about it. There's two, having a plan. If you ever get to the point where you have a plan and you have the means, please call somebody. And make sure that
you have a plan to commit suicide or a plan
to commit suicide.
Oh yeah.
So when we talk to people, right, when in the trainings, that's some of the questions you're taught to find out.
What kind of plans have you heard?
So the most lethal means is with a gun. That's the most common way that people, if they have the means. And so
mine was the freeway overpass. I was going to jump down the traffic and let them just run over me and kill me.
That's a common
one. That was my way.
And so if if you're talking to somebody and they're showing signs of suicide, again, those are some of the questions that we try to get out. Right. One, do you have a plan? And a plan is a means and a timeline, right? So what are your means? So if they tell you, I'm thinking about killing myself, and I'm going to do it with pills,
or murder, or suicide by cop,
or suicide by cop, right? They're going to get in trouble so that somebody else does it for them. But that's so right. There's thinking about taking your own life, and then there's having a plan. And if somebody has a plan, that escalates it by 10, right? If somebody just says, I've thought about it, and it just kind of comes across my mind, be there for them, try to guide them. If they actually tell you that they have a plan, that's when you don't want them to be alone. That's when you really want to try to get them help. And so through the trainings, that's what we try to teach people to ask questions about, right? Not just doing it, but you actually have a plan. If they say, I think I'd like to do it with a gun, ask them, do they have a gun? Do you have a gun? Right? Because if they don't have a gun, then it's still just kind of a thought, and that doesn't make it any less significant. Right. But if they have a firearm and that's their means, then now things are starting to line up that they might just get to the point. And so those are some of the questions we teach. Do they have a plan? Do they have a timeline? Because answers to those questions give you can escalate the situation significantly.
Oh, a timeline. Sure. I'm going to do it at 10 o'clock tonight or midnight or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Which again, what it's hard to have any type of um, input from those who have taken their own life. But what we know is that, it's very common for people to have that type of scenario, right? It's not just one day they had a bad day, so they do it. Oftentimes, those who are thinking about taking their own life, it's very well thought out. They've thought about it for a while, and they have a plan. They have a timeline. I'm going to do it by this date, and it's not uncommon. And so it's, we sometimes it seems like it just happened. From what we know, it is rarely the case that it just happened because of a bad day. It's rarely the case because
it's been building up.
It's something that builds. It's something that they plan around. It's something so again, having those conversations, even though it might seem like it just happens from time to time, chances are this is something that's been planned. They've been having inside of them for a while, and so it's not uncommon for them to think about it and to have a means, to have a plan. And so if you can get those details out of them, you can hopefully try to help them, because the chances are, if they're serious about it, they have a plan. They have they're that, if they're that deep into it, then okay, this is serious.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's tough.
I have your number underneath. I don't know if that was okay to put.
Sure. Yeah.
Yesterday when I was putting, it's not on here now, but
it's very important. I tell everybody I talk to, I'm not a clinician. I maybe have plans to become a clinician at some point if I decide to go back to school. And so if I do ever get calls, that's the first thing I tell them. I'm not a clinician. And so, as far as reaching out for help, it's not that I would mind if people did reach out to me, but I might not. I can point you in the direction. If you are in a crisis, we have the new 988 number, and that will connect you to an actual behavioral health clinician.
Your number doesn't show up till after this.
Sure.
So I'll take it off if you want.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that I mind. I just want people to, and anybody who needs help, I'm happy to answer the phone to anybody who needs help.
But I have the website for them to go to.
Yeah, and I would put up that number as well, 988. It's our new mental health.
I can add it right now.
It's our mental health crisis number. It's people relating, and it's different than 911 because it's not meant to be a dispatch service. It's meant to be a crisis line that you can call and get connected to a behavioral health clinician and get immediate support. And so that's if you or anybody watch, about if you ever
is that a 505 988?
It's just 988. That's all you
988?
That's the entire
I've never heard of that one. 988? That's mental health?
588. Yep.
Oh, 988. Wow.
Yeah, so 988 that was rolled out in September last year. And so every single state has had their crisis line that you can call. But a lot of them were 7-10 digit numbers.
Right.
And so nationally what they've been working on is connecting all of the crisis centers and giving one flat number, one easy to remember number that people can call.
That's great.
And so they came out with 988. They connected all the crisis numbers, and so now if you call 988, that's the direct line to call for mental health crises.
Okay.
If you or anybody is in a crisis, it's the way it's developed is it's meant to route you to New Mexico, so you will get a local clinician to support you, or a representative or somebody who's been trained in crisis de-escalation. If you cannot connect with somebody locally, it will route you to the next nearest crisis center. So, but it's meant to be an easy to remember number that you can call, get connected with somebody right away.
I didn't know that. 988.
Yeah,
Put 955. So, wow.
And again, it's not a dispatch number, so it's not like 911.
Right.
But it's meant to be a simple number to remember that you can call and get support.
That's great. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's good. So that's the first step. And one of the things NAMI does is NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. We do a lot of different things. We do education. We do resources. We do peer support, and then we do advocacy. And so one of the big things NAMI does for advocacy is we advocate for a better mental health care system. Because right now we don't have a lot to offer, right? If you're in a mental health emergency, it's the emergency room. In the emergency room, mental health emergencies are prioritized underneath medical emergencies. So if there's medical emergencies and you're a mental health emergency, you're last on the list. Same thing for medical transport, right? If you need to get to a hospital and there's somebody with a medical emergency and mental health emergency, the medical emergency always takes priority out of the mental health.
Wow.
And
Well, I mean, life or death.
Yeah,
I understand it.
You can understand it from certain perspectives, and that's not the point. Isn't to argue that.
But you shouldn't push aside.
Yeah,
the point. I mean?
The point is that NAMI, we advocate for a better mental health care system to where if you are in a mental health crisis, you can get immediate service, right? You can get immediate access to.
So can anyone get mental health without any money, or do they have to be on Medicaid or?
So you mean just in general?
If they want to see a therapist or something on a regular.
Yeah,
basis.
it depends.
I've had 10 years of therapy, but the government paid for it.
Sure.
And it was well worth it. I needed it. So
yeah. So for Peak Behavioral Health, located in southern New Mexico, we work with all Medicaids, New Mexico managed and by the state. And then we also work with surrounding state Medicaid, so Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. We also work with all the primary insurances. But there's a lot of free resources for mental health that you can go to.
That's a better way to put it.
There are places that offer free services for mental health. There are many services that offer free mental health services for specific populations, like first responders. You can get free mental health just for that population. For the
I understand
shelter.
first responders actually have a need for that because they can lose it, right?
So for first responders, the suicide rate has exceeded the occupational death rate.
Really?
So first responders are more likely to die by suicide than by on the job.
Wow.
But anyway, so there's a lot of resources for it. The battle with New Mexico is that we don't have enough providers. The population far exceeds the resources here. Right. So getting therapy, getting treatment for behavioral health is extremely challenging in New Mexico.
See, California is the other. They offer it so much that nobody's taking them up on it. Yeah. Maybe they should give New Mexico some of the resources. But yes, I've seen that around this city because I've only been here a year, and there's some things. Maybe we're going next week to Capitol. Maybe we can bring something up.
Yeah, that would be great.
If you want to give us some notes or to ask us,
help
you out.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that. I'm glad that's a topic because NAMI, we're a nonprofit. Myself and the president of NAMI Albuquerque, we're going to be in Santa Fe as well, trying to talk to some legislators, trying to get some money for NAMI, and trying to influence them to put more money towards mental health. We would like to. I mean, this isn't an official statement or anything, but I think what we need is a permanent fund for mental health in the state. We don't have any.
Oh, you don't have one. Wow.
We don't have a permanent fund for mental health.
Now that I can vote, you got my vote.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get somewhere near that with putting it up to a vote. But right now it's getting the conversation going. Mental health is a hot topic, and I hate to say it that way as if it's trending, but it is.
Oh, sure.
And so right now the iron is hot, and so I think right now is a really good time to push these legislatures to put more money towards mental health care, towards our infrastructure of mental health care, and find ways to get more providers here because getting treatment is so hard here for therapy, for IOP, PHP, which is higher level therapy or group therapy. It's extremely challenging, and one of the reasons is because our state is not very provider friendly. It's very challenging to be a provider. It's very challenging to be a provider in the state of New Mexico, and so people don't want to practice here.
Well, but again, if you go out there and you vote, then you can put these things on the ballot instead of waiting for somebody else to pass them and maybe get the power of the people. Some of those types of propositions,
Sure, yeah.
That's one way to get the people to tell the government how they're going to spend that money. Because right now the government spends it how they want to spend it. And there's a little influence here and there, but
very little is getting spent on mental health.
Voting ballots really work.
They do, and very, very little is getting put towards mental health. I mean, in this state, we have very minimal money going towards mental health. And as I was talking about the suicide rates, the reason why I pointed that out is because the suicide rates in New Mexico, we are the highest. We're depending on which study you look at, we're within the top 5 suicide rates within per state. We have one of the highest rates, and that's of course
really
out of 100,000 people.
You know, the breakdown is the age, the male or female.
So the highest suicide rate, I believe, is between I think it's between 24 to like 36 is the highest suicide rate. I'm not
I
positive
wouldn't have
about
thought that. I would have thought older or younger.
I think that's overall. I don't think that's just New Mexico,
Right.
but I think that's the highest suicide rate, somewhere within that range.
You know, male and female ratio.
Male or female? Males are more. So males take their own life by suicide more, but not because they attempt more. So males are more likely to use lethal. Males are more likely to use lethal force. And so that's why males have a higher suicide rate, is because they use more of a lethal force. We are finding that females attempt suicide at a higher rate. They just use less lethal means, and so they're not. They're, I hate to say, unsuccessful. But their attempts do not take their life because they typically do not use as lethal means as males do, and so that's why males have a higher rate, but females have a higher attempt rate.
So they both need help there. Wow.
Both need help. Both need help. I mean, so what I was saying about New Mexico is that the rate only is increasing. So the suicide rate has only continued to increase nationally. It's increased, but in New Mexico, it only goes up. It only goes up. It's year after year, more and more people commit suicide, and that's the only number I need to know that tells me we're losing the battle. We're doing something. We're missing something. If the suicide rate continues to increase, we're missing something.
We are. I want to read this comment, but then Annis told me to ask about Native American statistics. Let's see what he says here. Who are you free for? When are you free for conversation about sending? Oh, this is personal. You could call me this evening. The number's on my channel underneath, and there's 2 numbers there. Call me this evening. Sometime I'm free. Okay, or the weekend. Thanks. So I didn't know that was a personal thing. So she was wondering about the statistics for the Native Americans here.
So I don't know actual numbers on suicide rates for Native Americans. I do know that it is. They have a higher rate.
I was going to say
ethnically, that ethnic group has a higher rate than other ethnic groups. Do
you know if that's just New Mexican Native Americans, or is that throughout the whole country?
I think it's just widespread. Comparing, cultural groups to cultural groups. I think they have a higher rate. They do have a higher rate, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is culturally. I travel up to Northwest New Mexico several times a month, and I meet with a lot of Native American hospitals out in Gallup, in Farmington, East.
It's all
East
that part
Arizona.
of the reservation.
But
it's not a reservation. They call it what's it called? The sovereign nation now.
Yeah, that's out on the reservation. I mean, I'm from Gallup, which is very heavily based in Native American culture, and we call it the reservation. I don't know if that's changing or not, but so that's out on the reservation.
Yeah, that word is, I think, is going to change soon. I think it's starting to.
So gotcha. Okay, good. To
what
know.
Are you from the reservation? People say like that. You know what I mean?
No, it's always good to educate yourself on better words, more inclusive, and or less exclusive. But so they do have higher rates. That's for a couple different reasons. One is because culturally it's much more challenging for them to seek treatment. They don't. I did a presentation for the Bear Foundation, which is a foster care foundation, and they requested some information on Native American mental health. And so I have a really good friend from Gallup. She's a clinician, and so she did a presentation on Native American and mental health, and she was the one that was explaining that Native Americans are very culture based and very community based, so they want treatment and they want everything to come from within the community, and so for them to seek treatment outside of the community is almost taboo for them. It's not, you're not supposed to go outside the community, and especially the clash of Western medicine with their traditional medicine.
And there's really no blending of the two.
So there's, as these younger generations get older, you're seeing more mix. But with the older generations, some of them want nothing to do with Western medicine. Whether it be medication, therapy, whatever it be, they have their traditional means. And so again, it's looked down upon to seek treatment outside of their traditional treatment, right? To go to a Western medicine hospital is frowned upon. And
I grew up in a big Chinese neighborhood in San Francisco. Same thing, because they have their Asian ways of healing and holistics and all that,
Right.
and they don't have much faith in American
Right.
medicine.
Yep.
So I've seen it other cultures too, and
and that's why. So that's one reason why they don't. You see a higher rate.
Right.
This another reason is there's kind of goes hand in hand with it, but they don't have any resources because they are so community based and they don't allow too many people to come in and build hospitals. They don't have a lot of resources out there. So, in rural areas, so for the Native Americans, they live in very rural areas, but in rural areas, even rural areas, those areas, we do see higher rates of suicide in any rural area, no matter what, because of one, isolation. The more you're isolated, we find that more people get this tendency to want to feel like they're trapped from the world. And then two, they don't have resources. Rural areas have less resources, which means less people to turn to for help. So a couple different reasons why. And then,
and transportation probably.
Transportation, right? Means means
buses
of getting,
aren't going out there. And you got to have a vehicle. And if you don't have the vehicle or
right,
gas money,
so
sure.
Yeah, and then there might be some other things that we can look towards, like violence or alcohol. They can right. That's very that's
and
very
especially
heavy
with that culture. I know.
Sure,
and fire water, right?
Sure,
Sure.
And just the what am I trying to say? The not the value of life, but the status of life that they have on the reservations or on the sovereign nations can lead to very just isolating situations to where people feel like they might not have any other route. And very much so with the substance use, we see that a lot involved. And so I can't speak too specifically on it, but those are some of the things I've heard. I grew up in that culture. I have a lot of respect for it. I'm very happy that I grew up in it. You don't think a lot about it when you're just kind of living it, but looking back, I really appreciate having grown up with a lot of Native American friends. My family works in the industry and everything. Okay. So, but as far as suicide statistics, we do know they're higher, and those are just some of the reasons that we can assume that might be causing.
I want to talk about the nonprofit that you started.
Sure.
A little bit, you've mentioned it, but maybe you could, let everyone. I mean, be proud about it.
No, I'm very proud of it.
And,
I am very proud of it. Yeah, this is probably one of the most exciting things. I got a lot of stuff going on. I've worked in marketing and business development for some time, but the last year of my life has been the most purpose-driven year of my life. I've never felt so.
You got bragging rights.
I've never felt so focused in my life on what I'm trying to get done, and it feels really good. And one of those things that has brought purpose and given me a real drive is Never Ride Alone. Never Ride Alone is a nonprofit.
And I'll pull it up on the screen for you guys.
Never Ride Alone is a nonprofit that I started in partnership. And I'll give you the little backstory. So I joined the board for NAMI, and because I do outreach just day to day, I'm kind of heading up the outreach. And so back in April, I was actually at a Native American convention and Isleta, and I get a call from a gentleman. His name is Richard Lima. He's a gentleman here.
Let me know if you want to click on anything here.
Yeah, sure. If you just want to scroll down,
you can do it.
Yeah, you can.
It'll show on there.
I can look around. Just so I get a call from Richard Lima. That's who this kind of talks about here, Richard Lima. And we can look at his about, just so we can see a picture of him. He called me in April. And brother to suicide.
Oh wow.
That was back in April, and so he's a cyclist. He just moved to Albuquerque just over a year ago with his wife from North Carolina. Wow. This is Richard here, and he's a cyclist. He's an endurance athlete, so he's done triathlons and he rides his bike all the time. And he's just a really genuine guy. And after losing a family member to suicide, he felt like he had to do something, and so he called me up. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to ride my bike across the country, and I want to raise some money for suicide awareness and prevention. And I found NAMI, and I'd love to partner with you." Okay. And he was really just looking for somebody to give the donations to. And so I said, "Yeah, of course. We'll take any donations we can get." But me and everything that I've been working on with mental health, behavioral health. As soon as he gave me this story, I said, "Look, if you'll have me, I think we turn this into something and we should run with it. And so me had met the first time we met. I said, Richard, I think we should call it Never Ride Alone. At the beginning of June, on June 4th last year, he left Mooresville, North Carolina, which is where he's from, and he rode to Santa Monica, California.
Really?
Yeah, and we did this all in the name of awareness.
74 days.
Yep. And so from that time, he got to Santa Monica, I believe, August 18th. And so within that time, he rode. He was out there for 74 days. He rode 4,608 miles. He climbed 163,551 feet of elevation. He was on the bike for 327 hours, 52 minutes, and 19 seconds.
Is that a Guinness Book record?
I doubt it. I'm sure people just go round and round on the bike, sure. But it might be up there, maybe. Some of these, but then these are the important ones: the nonprofit partners and the Trek store partners.
So you got 10 nonprofit partners. So they like sponsor them, maybe.
So Trek sponsored him. They donated him the bike and some gear, and as he rode his bike across the country, they gave him free tune-ups and just kept the bike moving.
And did he just camp out along the way?
And so he has his bike and he has his tent. But what we did along the way was, he started in Mooresville, and along his journey, we would host outreach events with local Trek and with local NAMIs. That's a map that we put out. I don't know how much it can be. So this was his.
On the screen too.
Mark is where we had done events. And I think I missed some of them. Or every red mark is where we did events. So we did an event in Charlotte. We did an event in St. Louis. We did an event in Kansas City, Springs. And he rode up. We did an event in Boise. We did an event in Bend, Sacramento, and then as he rode along, what we were doing was we just call up local nonprofits. We always started with NAMI. We tried to reach out to the local NAMI. If we couldn't get in touch with them, we would reach out to another nonprofit. So up in Colorado, we worked with one in Denver called Rise Against Suicide, and they offer free mental health therapy for adolescents who might be contemplating.
They had a little more money in Colorado.
So, but this was the whole point. Riding, in each of these places, what we did was we got news coverage. So at 7 of the stops that we did, we got video news coverage. They came out and did a story, and they told they did it on the.
Do you take donations?
We do take donations.
So people out there, think about maybe helping out.
Yeah, if you're watching, and we're more than welcome to. Yeah, I appreciate the plug on that.
So the picture underneath, they'll be underneath the video. I think there's one scrolling with Brandon, but please check out underneath the video. Click on those websites, check them out, and think about maybe help his cause.
Yeah,
because suicide is in every family, I believe. Somebody knows some who.
So that was the first ride. Second ride we did was in October. He took off mid-October, and he rode Route 66. That was the plan, was to ride Route 66. So
does that still go all the way across the country? I know they built freeways over it and stuff like that.
It does. Some parts you cannot be on the Route 66. But that was the plan, was to do Route 66. So he started off here. He came down. He was doing Route 66. We were doing the same thing, setting up events. When he got to New Mexico, he hit really bad snow. This was just at the beginning of November.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So he hit
my
really
Christmas
bad.
plans got canceled.
He hit really bad snow, and it was getting too cold.
Sure.
It was getting too cold, but also Route 66 has become very dangerous to ride as a cyclist. People,
the gravel, the pavement, or
well,
just...
so there's no shoulder.
Okay.
So they, on the interstate you have a big shoulder, even though he doesn't ride on the interstate all that often. But on the interstate you have a big shoulder. Route 66, the end of the road is so he's in the lane. And from his stories, people just haven't been very considerate. They'll get as close to you as they can, even though they have the whole other lane.
One thing about Albuquerque, I don't know about the rest of the state, but yeah,
Sure.
there's some aggressive drivers out here.
Well, and what he learned was through Oklahoma, talking to locals, he learned that they specifically don't like cyclists on their roads. So they try to scare you a little bit. And so that was part of it. Route 66
was not their road. It's a public road.
It's not their road. But Route 66 got too dangerous. And it was getting too cold. So once he hit New Mexico, from there he would have had to go through Flagstaff, which would have been really challenging. Camping, snow, all those things.
Right.
So we had to change it up a little bit. I need to update this map, but he cut down south, and then from there he went down to Las Cruces, and then rode over to San Diego. Wow. And so he finished that ride. That was his second ride. He has most.
Now, how far have you done any trips like this?
I don't know. I'm not an endurance thing. I definitely exercise, but I'd like to. This year, I'm getting a bike, and my plan is to get out there with her to try to do some type of trip. Okay. But now that Richard's bike's back, so he has a lot of stories. If you're ever looking for a guest, he can tell you.
Is he local?
Yeah, he's an Albuquerque man. He's here.
Definitely.
And he has. I mean, everybody he talked to has some story, like you said, about suicide, about family member, about mental illness, and he's had people crying in his arms. He said people telling him that they've attempted and they're so happy that it wasn't successful. He just has countless stories of people, because everywhere he goes, everybody he stops, he says, "I'm riding for suicide prevention. We're trying to save a life here." So people just open up to him, and so we got a lot of coverage, a lot of people talking about it, and so 2023 we have really big plans. We want to do a lot more stuff local, so we're gonna do a lot of stuff. Like we're organizing a trip to one of the Santa Fe colleges where he's just gonna ride out there. He can book it out there in a day. I'm gonna go meet up with him. He's gonna talk, and I'm gonna do a suicide prevention training. And so we're gonna do a lot more stuff like that locally. And then this spring in May, what we're doing is we're planning his next trip. And this next one, we're gonna do it in partnership with Wounded Warrior. For veterans.
I'm all for those guys too.
Yeah,
right?
and so we're gonna do it in partnership with them. They have an office in Colorado Springs, Denver or Colorado Springs, and so that's gonna be where his next actual trip is gonna be. He's gonna be from here to Colorado
Does he do anything
Springs.
with Facebook or YouTube or where
He does, and so
he's when he's taking these trips, can you watch him live?
So you can't watch him live, but he posts all the time. Okay. So and I
can help you out with that. It's easier than you think.
To show us. Yeah, so we plan to do that. We'd like to get more live shots. And,
sure.
One of our plans, and this is great for your listeners if they know anybody, is for the first trip to Colorado Springs, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a veteran cyclist to ride with him.
You hear that, guys? And they could probably be different states, right?
Yeah. If someone wants to come
along the way or something, right?
Yeah, we want to make sure that the person is up for the task, because he's out there riding for about 6 to 8 hours.
Maybe you want
to
vet the people a little.
Yeah, so I don't want to discourage anybody, but this, we're looking for a serious cyclist who wants to get out there and do this and ride with Richard. And so we're putting the word out there. If you know any veterans who are cyclists, who are willing to kind of go against the elements, because they're going to be camping. Colorado Springs should be a pretty quick trip. They should be able to get there in about 3 to 4 days.
From where?
From Albuquerque.
God, really? That sounds fast.
They book it. They ride. And that's why we want
about a 6-hour drive. So that's they're going. Wow.
So on the road, Richard does probably on average about 80 miles a day.
Really?
Yeah. On average, his longest day I think we have recorded is like 140 something.
What would be his average speed? I know you got uphill,
downhill.
So
we tracked that a little bit.
Is it 5 miles an hour? 10 miles an hour?
No, it was like 13.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
So we tracked that.
But I know you have
here.
inclines and all that stuff, and I get
Go
it.
to the first ride.
So probably times he has to walk the bike, maybe.
There's only been one time when he had to walk it uphill because he just got to a point where he just couldn't climb anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, so this average speed was 14. That's
that's
an
impressive.
average of his average.
Right,
So it's not,
I know
it's not
hard to-
completely accurate.
I get it.
But he's booking. He's an athlete, so he's not just out there doing it. He's out there and he rides. He rides.
That's impressive. That's an impressive.
He's a
time.
very impressive guy, but he's completely selfless. He's he enjoys it, of course, but he's out there and it's kind of has some symbolism. Endurance, athleticism, and kind of just fighting through life struggles. Right? You can't just stop. Richard, he could just stop if he wants to, but every single day he's out there reminding himself that, he chose to do this ride. There's people that wake up with mental illness that don't choose that. And so,
very true.
That's
very
his motivation is that, those people that are struggling, they don't have the choice to always just stop.
Right.
Of course, sometimes they think they do with suicide, but so that's his motivation is that when his legs are burning or, he's slept in freezing temperatures, he slept in pouring rain. Whenever he comes up against the elements, he just reminds himself that he chose to do this. And if those people with mental illness can push through, then he can push through this. And he just hopes to be some type of motivation and encouragement to those out there to keep going.
All right.
Our slogan for that is keep pedaling, and that's the idea is just life is hard. Stuff is going to happen, but sometimes all you can do is just keep pedaling. And before you know it, you get to the top of the hill and you survived.
That almost sounds like life.
Right? Just sometimes you just got to keep your head down and keep pedaling, and you'll get through it. And that's so. We got big plans for 2023. We want to get more people riding. We want to do more trips. Can
I take that?
Yeah,
off?
you can take control. I'm done showing.
Right.
And so look us up, support us. If you know any veterans, let us know. We're trying to put our next ride together, and I hope to get out there myself. But
all right.
yeah, it's very exciting because it's all grassroots, just trying to figure out how do we get this thing going.
Sure. Well, I hate to say we've gone. Well, we don't really have a time here, so we could talk for hours. But it's 4:20.
Sure.
Don't take. I should have said that word. 4:20. we don't.
Yeah, you can't
condone that
sugarcoat
here.
things, right?
But some final words, final advice for anyone out there.
You're not alone. You really aren't, even though it feels like it. There's help and there's treatments. There's good people in this world. If you just reach out. Sometimes for us as individuals, the hardest thing is to ask for help. We have a lot of pride as humans, right? And we have a lot of our egos get in the way. But we're, no person is an island. We're not in this alone. We need each other. I think we learned that through the pandemic, right? We need each other. We're not meant to be isolated from each other. We need each other because that's how we survive. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. There is help. NAMI, look into NAMI if you're actually looking for some type of support, and then keep pedaling. Just keep going. It will pass, and you can get through it.
All right. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Sure.
I know you join us on different occasions and events.
Yeah.
We can do some.
Very happy to be involved with Wings of Life, and the whole organization is great. She's brought me in for several different things. So any way I can be a resource, that's my goal, is just to be a resource for. So
you bet.
Give me a call.
All right. Thanks again. We'll see you all next week. I've got an author who has done interviews with Charles Manson, Scott Peterson, Ted Bundy, all the famous serial killers. It's coming on next week. It's going to be very interesting. Check it out. See you then. All righty. Thank you.